Hey everyone, this is Dr. William Clark, and I'm here for your workshop, How to Write the Perfect Grant. I'm so excited to be with you today, and I'm excited to just bring this content to you. We have so many people in the room today, all over the country, and from what I understand, some people from all over the world. And so I'm excited to invite those folks into this room. I'm excited to invite you into this room, into this workshop. And I just want to acknowledge who we know that we have here. Renee from Connecticut, Mike from New York, Thomas from South Carolina, Joyce from Georgia, Sharon rather from Georgia, Q from Connecticut, Carl from DC, Matt from California, Kevin from Ohio, Melissa from Texas, Isaac from Illinois, Patricia from Pennsylvania, Arthur from Virginia, Joseph from Virginia, Vicky from Baltimore, and William from Arizona, and so many more. This is just a few of the folks who are in the room. So I wanted to acknowledge those folks. I wanted to welcome you all into this room, How to Write the Perfect Grant. And with that being said, I do want to just go ahead and jump into this without any further ado. Before we do anything else, I want you to know one thing. My goal is very simple. My goal is to help you raise money now for your worthy cause. And if that's why you're here, if this is why you are taking this class, this workshop, then this is the workshop for you, because I try to help as many people as I can figure out how to raise serious money for their programs, because there's so much going on in the world. And given what we're going through these days in this season, it seems as though there's a huge need for more and more nonprofits who are able to jump in and to be a critical part of what we need to continue to heal as a country and to move forward as a community. Now, as some of you may know, because you register for this workshop, I have significant experience raising serious money for nonprofits. Been doing so for quite a while, and as you can see, based on the image on the screen, you see a six-figure check, and that's what we're after, right? We're after major, serious money for our nonprofits, because if you don't have major money coming in, then it's very difficult for you to serve the needs of your community, and I want to help you do that as best as I can with this workshop. Now, because you joined me today, I want to make sure that you have access to my free partnership ranking tool. That particular tool is essential to helping you figure out how to find the right partner that will help you land your next grant. And here's a tip for you before we even jump into our main content. It's important for you to know who the right partners are and who you should be partnering with, because as a new nonprofit, or as a nonprofit still in its infancy, you need partners that help vouch for you and to appeal to funders to say, hey, this organization is the right one to partner with. Now, if you don't have that, if you don't have partners, if you think you can go it alone, you're going to find it very difficult, if not impossible, to find that first grant for your nonprofit, and that is very discouraging. And what I teach in my webinar, which is the free webinar, and the tool itself, which you'll get access to, is that you can land a serious grant, a major grant, if you have the right partner. So I want you to make sure that you tune into that tool, check your email in a few moments or so, where you'll have the link to that information so you can access that. Now, what I'm about to share with you in this particular workshop has helped me raise over $941,000 in the past 12 months, several millions of dollars over the past couple of years, and so on and so on. And so I'm proud, I'm happy to share with you what I have. It has worked for me, it continues to work for me, and we continue to perfect our craft here where I am stationed and where I work. And just a quick earning disclaimer, whatever I have achieved with the strategies I'm getting ready to show you has worked for me. Your results may vary. In fact, your results may be much better than mine. And if your results are better than mine, please tell me. Please drop a line, send me a message, email, inbox me, leave a comment on any of my social media pages, because I want to celebrate your success, and I want people to know that you are finding success in these trying times, and that it is not impossible. And so please be sure to share your testimonies of success by utilizing the stuff I'm about to share with you today. Now, whatever you do, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to make a promise to me. Whatever I teach you today, will you promise to use it for good? That is important to me. I teach these workshops, I share this information, I engage in education, and I consult because I believe that there are people in this world like you who are taking this course who believe that they want to do great things. And I'm asking that whatever we learn today, whatever we teach today, whatever we engage in today, that you promise to do good by it. Would you agree to that? Just say yes in the comment box. Would you just say yes somewhere share wherever you're listening to your platform. I appreciate it, Thomas. Thank you for saying yes. Melissa, thank you for saying yes. Q, thank you for saying yes. Mike, thank you so much for saying yes. They keep coming in. Kevin, Arthur, thank you. Thank you so much for saying yes. And keep typing yes in the comment box, because this commitment between you and I is so key. It's so necessary for us to do the work that we do. And so I gladly teach this stuff. I gladly share what I know with you so that you can continue to do good work. So with that being said, let's move on in our presentation. Just a little bit about me. I've raised over $900 million in grants and contracts, been a part of that stuff, been the architect, been a team member, been a part of every position you can think of as it relates to fundraising. I've been fortunate enough to see $900 million come through in various forms. I've cultivated billions of dollars in economic development dollars and have overseen economic development dollars in the billions with my work in public work in the public sector. And what this simply means is I've helped small businesses figure out a way to generate billions of dollars in revenue by way of economic inclusion. And so those strategies between what I've done to raise 900 million or been a part of those teams, the strategies I used to cultivate billions of dollars for small businesses, you'll hear some of those strategies today. It's infused in my thinking. It's infused in my work. And so that is really important for you to know. I am Dr. Clark, and I have an earned doctorate degree in leadership, strategic leadership to be specific, from Regent University. And very proud of that. It's something that I committed myself to, and that work continues to infuse itself as well. And so you hear some of that in the presentation today. And lastly but not least, I love to ride my road bike. That is one of my joys, and I'm looking forward to getting out on the road as things clear up for us. So I want to share a couple of books with you that I have written, and I'm so appreciative of the books that I've been able to write. So I just want to share a few of them with you. Let's start with the bottom purple here, Leadership Development for Nonprofits. That particular book was written for obviously nonprofits, and it's a quick read. It's a quick read to talk about how to develop leaders and leadership systems within your organization. If you're looking to do that, if you're struggling with that, then this book is for you. Similarly, Leadership Development for Churches. It's the same content, just with a different perspective. Scriptural references are infused in there, but the content is the same. And so if you're struggling to build leaders within your church, your nonprofit, etc., those two books are for you. The next book I want to share with you is How to Reach the Unchurched. Now, as it implies, it is written for church folks. It's written for the faith-based community. However, the content of that book is so interesting, and it's relevant to nonprofits as well, because I talk about how to recruit people into your worthy cause. You're looking for customers, you're looking for partners, you're looking for stakeholders. That particular book and the principles that are shared in that book, I think, are relevant to nonprofits and churches. Let's see, Leverage. That is my first book. That book talks about how to take advantage of your current situations to create a new tomorrow. And that when I wrote that book, and that was again my first book, I wrote that book thinking about, man, what happened to me and how I was fortunate to overcome my circumstances and my situations have yielded some principles that I continue to use at the time that I wrote that book. And even today, I still use those principles. So if you're looking to build a new tomorrow, if you're looking to create a new tomorrow for your company, then that book is for you. Next is Sustainable. This is my baby. This is my doctoral thesis. And I'm so, I don't know what to say about this book except that you need to get it, right? It is talking about how to sustain your faith-based organization and nonprofit without traditional resources. Yes, we're going to talk about grants in this class, and yes, in my master class, I talk about grants a lot. I talk about fundraising a lot. But in this book, Sustainable, I talk about how to go beyond that, because there is going to come a point in time where you as a nonprofit, you're going to need to diversify your revenue sources, and I talk about how to do that. So you need to grab that book. I talk about the principles and the infrastructure you need to make that happen, and that book took me 4 years to write, and I'm proud of the work in that book. Lastly, Grant Writing 101. This is the reason why we're having this class. This book is the reason why I've been teaching grant writing the past couple years. I wrote this book to clarify for a number of people what it takes to write a grant, to land a grant, to be successful. And I reveal all the secrets that really aren't really secrets, but I reveal those things that are really important for you to know if you're going to write grants, if you're going to fundraise, if you're going to partner, if you're going to do all these things. I wrote in that book everything you need to know, and partially some of those things are going to be shared today. As a matter of fact, I believe as a part of this workshop, each of you are getting a copy of my book, Grant Writing 101. Just check your email towards the end of this workshop. You'll have access to that book. When you read that book, you'll see some of the most basic tidbits, tips, tricks, behind the scene things that you might have speculated, but now it's confirmed and affirmed. And for those of you that want your friends to have that book, encourage them to get their own copy of that book, Grant Writing 101. It's an important read. When I wrote it, it just felt like I was just dumping and just releasing everything within me to get it out. And certainly it's been well received. So I'm so happy that you're able to get your free copy of that book. Listen, before we move forward, I want to make sure that you stay connected with me on all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. You can find me at Dr. William P. Clark. All you got to do is search for my name, Dr. William P. Clark. You'll find me on all those platforms. Also, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my podcast, the Dr. William Clark Podcast, on all podcasting platforms. If you have a smartphone, you can find me there. If you don't have a smartphone, you can find me on all social media platforms and YouTube, where I do upload video versions of my podcast. If you want the insider thoughts about fundraising and grant writing and everything related to revenue for your nonprofit, then you need to subscribe to my podcasting platform. And we're looking to add more subscribers because it's good content. So I'm glad I was able to share that with you. Again, the Dr. William Clark Podcast on all podcasting platforms. Now, there are 3 secrets to raising serious money, and this is the depth of the content you came here for. There are 3 secrets that I have learned over the years when it comes to raising serious content for your nonprofit. Secret number 1, a clear strategy matters and is the 3rd fastest way to raising serious money for your nonprofit. We're going to come back to that. Secret number 2, performance matters and is the 2nd fastest way to raise serious money for your nonprofit. I think when I share that secret, people are surprised by that particular secret and where it's ranked. Is not number 1, but it's not number 3. It's number 2. Performance matters. Here's our top secret. Secret number 3. Relationships bridge gaps to funding and is the fastest way to raising serious money for your nonprofit. That should not be a surprise to you. But for the purposes of our workshop today, we're going to talk about secret number 1. A clear strategy matters and is the 3rd fastest way to raise serious money. And further, we're going to talk specifically about how to write the perfect grant. This is the purpose of our workshop today. Now, today we're going to cover about 6 things I see here on the screen. We're going to cover planning the writing process. We're going to cover becoming a creative during the writing process, developing the right writing techniques, terminology, stories to capture the attention of funders. We're going to talk about practicing the writing process. I'm going to share some tips, tricks, and critical resources to improve the development of your perfect grant. And we're going to do a case study. We're going to review a case study. That is going to be all done virtually, and we're going to walk you through all that stuff. So here's number 1. Plan the writing process. Now, this is what you got to work on when it comes to writing the perfect grant. You got to plan the writing process. First, you got to envision an end result of what you want once you submit this grant application. Now, think about what I'm saying, right? You have to submit the grant application first, right? And you got to understand that once you submit it, you got to have a vision for what's going to happen after it's over. Now, when you're going through the grant writing process and you're developing the grant and you're researching grants and you're in the early stages, we obviously have a vision for our organization. We obviously envision us serving the masses. We have a vision of us doing great things. We have a vision of people being supported and receiving the services that we have to offer. But there is another vision you have to develop, and it impacts your writing, right? You have to forecast your thoughts down the road. Once we submit this grant, now what? What do we want to happen? Do we want the result to be we got the grant? Do we want us to at least get considered for a grant? Do we want to get the word out that we are major players in this grant writing space and in this space that where we're serving our customers? There needs to be a vision that you're trying to achieve. This helps shape how you're going to write the grant. And the reason why I shared what I shared is because some organizations are in their early stages. and they're just now launching, and they know that they're not going to get a grant. They know they're not going to be considered for a particular grant, or particularly if it's a large size, right? But what they're after is not the grant award itself. They are after the experience. They are after the process of learning how to write a major grant. They're after the process of learning how to handle the pressure, how to navigate all the challenges that come along with writing a grant, etc. And so it's not about the money in some legit cases. It's about what we're going to learn and what we're going to gain as a result of this experience. Once you identify what you are after you submit the grant, this then tells you how you should craft the grant, how you should pursue the grant writing process. This leads me to my next point. You got to develop an action plan to get the job done. Once you have this vision of what you want afterwards, now you got to do an action plan of how you're going to get the job done. What do we need to do? How do we take those steps? How do we make it happen? Where do we need to go? What research do we need to do, etc.? And in previous classes that I've taught, I prepare and show an action plan of the grant writing process. And I talk about in the action plan every little step in the Grant Writing 101 book. When you crack open the book, I talk about this in depth, and I go deep into this because it's important for you to not only have a strategic plan for your organization, you must have an action plan for the writing process. I have seen in too many cases where clients of mine, partners of mine, stakeholders of mine, they have an idea in their head, I want to get this grant, and they start writing. That is not the right path to take. That is not the right strategy to take. Rather, it's more important for you to plan out the writing process, and we're going to talk about this in this session, before you put pen to paper. And another thing you got to do before you even write, you got to identify your writing team. This is all inclusive of the planning process of writing. If you don't know who's going to contribute to your writing team, you're going to set yourself up for failure when you start to write this particular grant. Who should be in my writing team? I don't know. You know that. But here's an example of what you should consider. If you're in an operationally based nonprofit that serves other people, whether it's older folks, younger folks, people in between, people with certain categories or labels, you're going to have people on your team that are focused on operations. These are your program directors, operations directors, etc. They should be on your writing team. You should have people, obviously your executive, they should be on your writing team. You should have some people who have even more groundwork experience, frontline experience. Some may be case managers, some may be intake specialists, some may be counselors of some sort. You should have some of those people on your writing team. You should have some board members, if you can, on your writing team. You should have some stakeholders on your writing team. Why does this matter? And I can tell you, there are people that say to me, Doc, I'd much rather get a grant writer. That's cool. A real good grant writer is going to engage multiple people in the writing process, and whether you observe it or not, those people are a part of, get this, the writing team. These people matter to the writing team because you as the executive director, you as the leader, the designated person taking a charge for this, you don't know everything. While you may have, in some cases, come up from the ranks and ascended to where you are now, maybe you were on the front lines and you launched your own nonprofit and you know what it's like. Here's the thing. The farther you get away from program operations individually in your role, the farther away you get away from reality and what you know to be truth. Okay? So now, when you go back to the list, operations folks, case managers, intake specialists, board members, stakeholders, etc., those people are close to the work and they have a certain perspective that you may not have or you may not be aware of. So their contributions are going to give you the facts you need. They're going to give you the inspiration you need. They're going to give you all the context you need to write the perfect grant. This is why in this section we talked about planning the writing process. Next section, number 2. You have to become a creative during the writing process. Here's the first point under that. You have to get a variety of people in the room who can do 3 things: think, contribute, and challenge. You cannot have a room full of yes people who don't understand the work. Or if they understand the work, they won't tell you the truth or their truth because they fear your leadership. Now, if you are a authoritative leader, if you are a leader that has to be hands-on, and you must be aware of all things at all times, you are just in control of everything, you're going to have a bunch of people who are yes people who are going to respond to you in kind because they're trying to stay on your good side. A strong leader, one, leadership is defined by influence, your ability to influence others and yourself to achieve a goal. That is the basic definition of leadership. But a strong leader is secure in who they are, and they are not afraid of the intellectual prowess of the people on their team. And that's where I get this from, right? You have to have people in the room who's helping you write, who can think for themselves, who are not persuaded by groupthink, who are not persuaded by the popular opinion, even though the popular opinion may not be fact-based. You need people who are able to think creatively and objectively outside of the box of your industry or the program type that you're operating. You need people who are not only able to think, but who can contribute regardless of what people are saying. Here's an example. Everybody wants to go left, but you need somebody who's going to think for themselves and contribute a thought that may go right. Not because they think everybody else is wrong, but they believe that going right can provide some opportunity. Or you can have everybody go right, but you want everybody who agrees to going right agreeing to the fact that this is the right reason to go right, and here are some ideas behind it. Before I accept the mass recommendation of my team, even if they're all pedaling in the right direction or the same direction, I ask each of them for their individual, unique perspective as to why they believe going in this direction makes the most sense. I got to hear from everybody. I got to know your unique contribution. I got to hear your thought, your thinking process, because how you think as a leader may be different from everybody else, and how my team thinks may be different from their peers. So I want to hear everybody's contribution before I accept us going in the right direction. And here's the last piece. I need people to think, I need people to contribute, and I need people to challenge. Now, for me personally, I rather have people challenge me. Here's the reason, right? I have my own vision, my own idea. I am the leader. I'm the boss. I do what I do, right? And I'm going to think what I think. I have the most freedom to think. But I like people on my team who are able to challenge my thinking. Get this, with facts. I don't like to be challenged with opinions or feelings or I just thought that. No, I need to be challenged with facts. If I'm wrong, prove that I'm wrong, not by your gut feeling, not by your opinion, but prove that I'm wrong with facts. And this type of challenge, which is a healthy challenge, this doesn't challenge my leadership. This doesn't challenge my authority. This doesn't challenge my nonprofit organization. In fact, this challenges my own thinking because my own thinking may be flawed. This challenges my own contributions, which may be irrelevant to the conversation. So by having people on a team who can challenge you and challenge their own peers, what ends up happening is the bad ideas or the silly ideas get X'd out. And only the mature, smart ideas remain, and they bubble to the top. This is why you need people who can think, contribute, and challenge. Second, you need to set up several writing sessions to generate the best ideas. This, by far, is one of my favorite ideas and favorite things to do. What is a writing session? Now, if you get a grant writer, you give them the specs of the grant, you give them a couple ideas, and they go off and just write and produce the grant, and you submit it. If you're going to write the perfect grant, this is probably one of my favorite ideas I'm going to share with you today. A writing session is simply a moment in time or several moments in time where the group of people that we listed before, all the people that you should have on your team, right? Operations, frontline, management, stakeholders, board members who come together and review the core of the grant application, and we all write together. Now, imagine how a story is written for your favorite TV show. And if you've seen images, if you've seen behind the scenes, you see a room full of writers who are writing about a concept, a topic, and they're writing their ideas. Then there's a competition of some sort where everybody shares their ideas and people compete against each other for their idea to survive. What ends up happening is people start to mix and match ideas between theirs and others, and you start to see a blending of his idea and her idea and their idea, and what were separate ideas becomes one idea, right? That is the purpose of a writing session. So when you see the credits at the end of a show, at the end of a movie, and you see all these writers and you wonder, well, how did all these people write this stuff? They wrote their own content and they blended it. They figured out, well, that part in my writing section, it didn't make sense because it just doesn't flow well. However, if I take what Tommy wrote and what Lisa wrote and I put it in my part, and then if I take my section A and put it in their section D, and then we start to put this puzzle together, we can have a script that's a winning script. This by far is one of my favorite things to do. Now, there are a couple ways you can execute this. You can outline the grant itself, the parts that you want people to contribute to. You give them those parts and you tell people, do some homework, write down your thoughts and come to the meeting with ideas. Or you have a retreat type style where you do it real time over several days and people just go off in corners, right? We come back, we discuss, we fight it out, we figure out what makes sense, we go back and we write, and we keep going through the process until we single out what's the best idea. You will need a facilitator to facilitate the conversation, but this by far is one of my favorite things to do. And so this also, and just before I move on to the last point, this also brings out the biggest creativity within you and your team. It's awesome. Lastly, you should write from two perspectives, right? There are two perspectives you should write from. Number one, the industry that you're in, right? The work that you do. And number two, the industry you're not in, other industries. So for example, in our nonprofit, we do workforce development. And so when I write a grant, it's all about workforce development stuff. Content, the language, the lingo, the stats, etc. is about workforce development stuff. Now, my undergrad degree is in information technology, IT. So I love technology. I love the way information is gathered and presented. I love project management as a core. And so I have this underground hobby to still follow the tech world, right? And so a lot of things that I follow in the tech world, I understand, I'm able to process, and somehow, some way, that work, that industry, infuses itself into my grant writing. As you guys know, I have a doctorate degree in leadership development, I have a master's degree in leadership development. And not only does technology show up in my grant applications and in my content, my leadership stuff, my ideas, my theories, my books, they show up in grant applications as well. Other industries show up in the core work of workforce development. Why does that matter? Given the situation that we're in right now with the coronavirus, we've had to suspend in-person classes. I have changed all our classes to online classes now. Now, you can say, well, that's pretty easy. It was more challenging than you think. So we had to choose a platform of choice. We had to make sure our clients were connected. We had to make sure our partners were connected. And while I am not the IT guy in my team, in the organization, I have an IT background, and because of the speed with which we needed to operate, I was able to make it happen just like that. Again, you start to see other things flow into the work. Leadership development is a key part of workforce development. Not because all of our clients are going to become leaders, but because one of the theories I espouse and I believe in deeply is self-leadership. That is the idea of influencing self to achieve a goal. If you're looking to land your next job, you got to influence yourself to change your resume, change your attitude, change your perspective, change how you interview to land the next job, right? And it's all a part of the grant writing process. It's infused into what we write. It's infused into the language. Now, you who are taking this class with me, you guys have various backgrounds. You're not just into nonprofits. You're into other things. Some of you are into athletics and sports. Some of you are into other community engagement stuff. Some of you are into faith-based stuff. And that stuff should have influences on how you write your grant. You're not a one-dimensional person or character. You are multi-dimensional. And therefore, that should be reflected in what you write in your grant. Here's number 3. Develop the right writing techniques, terminology, and stories to capture the attention of funders. Okay? You have to capture the attention of funders. this becomes a very nuanced thing that you got to do. Now, there are 3 writing techniques you can explore when it comes to writing. Number 1, you can write academically. Okay, that is, you're writing clear, concise, and focused and structured, and everything you write is backed up by evidence, facts, and research. All right, this is where you start to see citations inside the grant application, right? Such and such is the case for our community, according to so-and-so, published in 2000 something something. They say, or the research says, or the stats say X, Y, and Z. Academic writing. If you have a master's degree or a doctorate degree, you'll see a lot of that show up in your schoolwork. So that is a part of the experience. Here's a second type of writing that you can pursue. That is business writing. Okay, business writing is writing that is direct, concise, and uncluttered. I will never forget the day I learned how to write in business talk, right? This is very early in my career. One of the things I learned was that long emails and long paragraphs don't do well. They don't go over well in the corporate environment. Rather, you got to say what you mean in one sentence, and that's it. And if you can't do that, that means your thoughts are all over the place. They're convoluted, and you don't have a handle, a mastery of your content. That's problematic. All right. Now, the last writing style that you can pursue is creative writing, where you share feelings and thoughts and emotions. All right. Think of poetry. Think of music. Now, you're not going to write poetry in a grant application. You're not going to write music in a grant application. But when you look at these 3 types of writing styles and techniques, all 3 of these techniques really can be infused into one grant application and can strike the right chord for the funder. You can write academically to show your prowess and control and command over the content and the work. You can write in business style, where you're getting to the point. You're not cluttered with a lot of fluff content, but you're straight to the point and you're helping your reader understand what you're talking about. And then you can wax poetic, where you can say all these things using words that express feeling in a mix of facts and directness. Seen it done. We do it quite often. And actually, we're going to do a case study at the end where we're going to review one of the grant applications that we've written. Okay. Now, here's another thing you got to do when you're developing the right writing techniques. You have to master the content of your industry. Okay. This is important because the funder who is reading your grant application is also a master of the content of your industry. What people don't realize is that funders are intellectual beings. They are smart. And in many cases, funders may have come from the operations world of that same industry or that same work that you're pursuing funding for. Some of them were leaders in their own right. Some of them were frontline people. But many funders have personal, hands-on experience working with the groups that you are working with. And I think this kind of overshadows a lot of times what people think funders know and don't know. Funders know a lot more than we give them credit for. So you have to master the content of your industry. And you got to make sure that you know the following things. You got to know terms, you got to know definitions, and you got to know examples that make the most sense for your work. So let me give you an example here, right? If nonprofit A serves youth between the age of 18 and 24 and are justice involved, funders know common terminology of this work. Common language may include opportunity youth, and some of you maybe serving this population may know this already. Opportunity youth, justice involved youth, single head of household, youth development, community development, trauma informed services, career pathways, etc. This may be common language in the work that you are involved in, and funders who are funding this work know this as well. Now, you got to understand this too. I told you that funders have experience. Some of them have experience, direct experience, running these organizations that did these services. But here's the other thing you got to understand: funders fund other organizations besides you. You're not the only fish in the pond, and because you're not the only fish in the pond, you got to also understand you're not the only fish in the pond that does the same thing. If you do youth services, there are other organizations that do youth services and are pursuing and have funding from the funder you are chasing after. Okay. And because of this, the funder not only may have personal work experience in this space, they also have experience learning from and working with other organizations, therefore increasing their knowledge base, increasing their intellectual prowess, increasing their awareness of the content. This is important for you to know. So as you seek to write the perfect grant, you have to master your content, because the funder will know if you are a functional subject matter expert or you're just faking it till you make it. All right. Now, lastly, the last part of writing techniques that I want you to master to capture the attention of the funder is you got to tell the best and most relevant stories and use them frequently and often. Here's the most basic framework of telling stories. 1, you got to select a character. Number 2, you got to identify the barriers of the character. And number 3, you got to have a story of how this particular character overcame their barrier. Now, the character of the story that you may be telling may be a client, it may be a staff member, it may be a stakeholder, it may be an external person, it may be an organization. Whatever the character is, you got to be clear on what they've been through and the barriers that they had to overcome and how they overcame it. This infused inside your grant helps you write the perfect grant. Some funders in their applications are going to ask for examples. They're going to ask for stories. They're going to ask for you to identify a time when. And this is why capturing stories along the way matters. This is why capturing stories according to the template I created around writing the right story, the perfect story, is so important, because it helps you capture what's been going on within your organization and how you've been able to impact lives over the years you've been operating. Number 4, practice the writing process. This is how you get good, if not great, at writing the perfect grant. You got to practice all the things I talked about: the techniques, the planning process, the writing sessions, the team engagement, etc. But here are a couple other things you can do to practice the writing process. Number 1, you have to engage in meetings and roundtables where content is discussed on a regular basis. Roundtables, collaborative tables, industry clusters. If there are industry clusters that talk about youth services, which is the work you may be into, make sure you find out where those meetings are taking place, how often those meetings are taking place, and the time they are taking place. It is essential for you to know this information so that you can attend those meetings, be at those roundtables. If you can lead those roundtables, try to do that yourself. If you can create one, if one doesn't exist, do that yourself. The reason why you want to do this is so that you can gather expert leaders who do the same work in the same room once a month, so that you all can discuss common themes, common ideas, common terminology, common strategies about how to better serve your customer. This improves your writing, not because you're going to copy what they're saying word for word, but your writing is improved when you're having intellectually stimulating conversations. The more you're able to talk with people in your industry about what's going on, what's working, what's not working, new terms that funders are using, terms the government may be using as they give out funding, that the more intellectual you become. And the more intellectual you become, that stuff starts to infuse itself into the grant application you're writing. And also, when you're having writing sessions, let's assume you're the leader. When you're having writing sessions, you're able to influence the development and the thought process of your team, because now you're sharing language that is more common to you now, and you're sharing it with them, so that that same language can be infused into their own writing and creative process. So you got to hang around other people who are doing similar things. Next, you got to utilize writing opportunities of all types to build the skills you're looking for. For example, writing emails, right? You can simplify and you can demean the email writing process, but if you use emails as a form of practicing what it means to write in business language, what it means to write in creative language, what it means to write in academic language, it is a way to build a skill in between grant applications. Another way to do this is to write a standard grant application for your organization. I talk about this a lot in my podcast, and you'll hear me talk about writing a standard grant application at the top of your calendar year or fiscal year so that you'll have that standard application that will guide you through the rest of the year, and it will limit how much you have to write. That is a tidbit that I wanted to share with you. But if you want to hear more about that, go to my podcasts and listen to me talk about that nonstop. Now, when you write the master grant application for the year, for the entire organization, you can practice how to write academically in business techniques and in creative techniques. And once you finish it, you can tweak it along the way to make the language better. And then lastly, integrate what you learn into your personal life. Now, another way to practice is to take your work home with you. Now, what I mean by that is, I'm not saying work from home. I'm not saying work longer hours than you need to. But what I am saying is when you start to practice something professionally and you do it in your personal life, it really becomes a part of who you are. For example, text messages to your family. Do you know someone in your family who sends these rambling text messages? Okay, maybe you're the one in the family group text that sends a business related text. For example, whatever you text is concise, is direct, and all the fluff is gone, right? But yet in the short text you send, you're communicating a clear thought, you're communicating a clear idea, and everybody understands what you're saying. Simple example, but when you start to practice that type of writing in your personal life, on your social media posts, it becomes a part of who you are. Maybe you're emailing your insurance agent back and forth. That becomes a part of who you are because now I'm going to email you in business talk, right? I want to get straight to the point because I need to practice that. I tend to write too creatively, so I want to practice on my business writing. Maybe I am researching something from my church, and I want to practice my academic writing. So I want to give the church leaders some research that has some context to it, and I have the footnotes, and I'm using APA format, right? I just want to practice this, right? People in your personal life won't have a vested interest in you practicing, but they will appreciate your practice, and they will take the practice. And for you, what you get out of it is obviously you help the people that's in your circle, but you get to practice this skill that you didn't have before. All right, number 5, tips, tricks, and critical resources to improve the development of the perfect grant. Here's my first tip here. You got to read, listen, and watch content of all types. I'm talking about YouTube. I'm talking about, let's call it right, YouTube University is what we're talking about. That is not a real university if you're wondering, but YouTube University or just YouTube is where you can learn almost anything. Type it in and you'll find what you need to learn. Podcasts. Radio shows, TV programs, TV shows. You can learn all types of things. One of the shows I love to watch, everybody jumped on the bandwagon of Shark Tank over the years, and I think that is worth watching. I think another show worth watching is a show called The Profit, Profit, The Profit with Marcus Lemonis. He goes behind the scenes of business development. If you can capture those episodes, you'll see how a successful business operates. And when you do that, when you understand how a successful business operates, it will influence how you write your next grant. It will influence the conversation you have with the funder who is interviewing you to determine if they're going to give you the grant or not. It will influence the performance measures you take on your next grant. You got to watch all types of content to give you ideas. Maybe you have a favorite movie, and within a favorite movie, there's a quote that just captures your attention and speaks to where you're trying to go with your organization, what you're trying to do with your community, where you want to see your grant writing go. You can infuse that stuff into the grant writing process. So you got to read, listen, and watch content of all types. Next, you got to study the competition that is receiving grant dollars from the funder you are targeting. You got to study those who are getting after the money. You got to study those who are successfully getting the money. You got to study those who are currently beating you out. The funder has its portfolio of people they are funding year after year. You can research who's gotten funding from that particular funder, and you can start to study, okay, what are they doing that I'm not doing? What do they have that I don't have? What are they what are their programs delivering that I'm not delivering? You got to believe that whatever they are delivering real time actually was written inside of a grant. So it gives you some insight into what they wrote in their grant applications to that funder and what that funder may be attracted to. And then lastly, focus less on perfection and focus more on just doing it, right? Stop trying to write the perfect grant. Just focus on just doing it. Just do it. Just write it. Just make it happen. People are waiting for you to do what you do. And so people are expecting you to move forward. People are expecting you to accomplish the things that are on your to-do list, right? And on your to-do list is to land your next grant or your first grant. Instead of trying to write the perfect grant, right, which we are talking about, the perfect grant doesn't come from perfect punctuation, perfect storytelling, perfect structure, perfect language. That doesn't make the perfect grant. What makes the perfect grant is everything we talked about. Everything we talked about, from planning, right? From being a creative, from developing the right techniques, from practicing, and from utilizing these tips and tricks. That's writing the perfect grant. That is what is attractive to funders. That is what's going to make a difference to funders when they are considering who to award the next grant opportunity to. Stop focusing on perfection as it relates to how you wrote it. No, it's the process that you follow. All right, so now we're going to do a review of case study. Now, I'm going to paste a link to this case study inside the chat box. In that link, you're going to find pieces of a grant that was written that did get awarded. And there are 3 questions at the bottom of that case study. And I want you to answer those 3 questions. I'm going to repaste those questions within the chat box, and I want you to answer them. Now, I'm going to give you 15 minutes to review the grant application and to answer the 3 questions, and then I want you to talk about your thoughts as it relates to those 3 questions after you review the case study. All right, everybody. So welcome back. Thank you for engaging in a robust conversation. Joyce, I saw you wrote a whole lot, and thank you so much for engaging. Melissa, you shared a whole lot of good content in your discussion. Patricia, you really had some insightful thoughts, and Mike really challenged us a lot. And thank you. There's so many in here. I was just scrolling through and looking at the conversation, and just want to thank those people. Q, thank you as well for what you were doing and what you were contributing to the conversation. And so we're going to pause here from the conversation. We're going to ask you to take a pause here. We're going to continue with the workshop because there's a little bit more I want to share with you. Now, the question we got to answer is, how will these strategies help you land your next grant? And this is the purpose of this workshop. You can't take this workshop and not utilize it to land your next grant. Number 1, these strategies will smooth out the writing process from here on out. When you look at everything we talked about, from the planning process to becoming a creative, to the writing techniques and capturing stories, to the practicing process, to the tips and tricks, and even the review process of the case study, all of this stuff will smooth over the journey of writing your next grant. Writing the perfect grant is employing all of these things I shared with you today. It is not about perfect language. It is not about saying things that's going to appeal to a funder that is the most sexy. That stuff does not work. Been there, done that. It does not work. It is all about the 5 key steps I shared with you. And if you got to replay your notes that we talked about today, please go back through them, because those things make up the perfect grant. So these things will help you smooth over the process overall. It will help you engage your team to help you with the writing process. This is critical. This is super critical, because no leader can do a thing by him or herself. You need a team to help you, and to help you to get your team engaged, you got to make sure that they have the infrastructure in place that will allow them to be the most successful. And then lastly, this journey, the things that I share with you, will help refine your communication with your potential funder. Funders appreciate good writing. They appreciate good planning. They appreciate good creative thought. They appreciate team engagement, all the things I shared with you. The reason why they appreciate it, because they know if you went through this process just to write a grant, then they also know that once they give you the money, you're going to take that same energy, that same planning process, that same team engagement process, that same creative and academic and business process, and you're going to apply it to the execution of the grant, which means that their money will be well spent. That is the end goal of writing the perfect grant.